Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for Calendar Cooking 2021, the final session of the year. Of course, we're on December, the last month in our calendar and the last recipe for the year. I promised you last month that we would be getting our calendars anytime soon, and we still should be getting the calendars for 2022 anytime soon. So also be on the lookout for how these calendar cooking sessions are going to go in 2022. They may be live or at a different location. We're still working on that. So we'll let you know as soon as we know. So we're in December, of course, and the recipe for this month is a soup recipe, which I love. And of course, in wintertime, when it's cold outside, we're thinking about that. We're thinking about soups and stews and staying warm inside. So this is a vegetable barley soup. And we'll talk a little bit about how you might change up this recipe to make it a little different for you, for what you like in your family. I'm always doing that and encouraging you to change the recipe, at least certain recipes, unless we're baking. If we're just cooking recipes, I always encourage you to change it to make it what works for you and your family. And there's always changes, especially to soup, that you can make. So with the vegetable barley soup today, we have a medium diced onion, a tablespoon of garlic powder, 2 tablespoons of olive oil, and that's actually our first step, are those first ingredients. I'm going to heat up my skillet over here, or my pan, my stock pot here, and I'm going to go ahead and add those first 3 ingredients. So my 2 tablespoons of olive oil, the diced onion. I did go ahead and pre-dice the onion this time. I feel like there's been a lot of these sessions where I've talked about dicing an onion. I'm going to focus on some other vegetables today. And then the tablespoon of garlic powder. Now, if I was making this at home, I would probably use fresh garlic. And if you use fresh garlic, I would encourage you to do the same. If you have not ever used fresh garlic, you might consider looking into that. You can buy it already diced if you prefer, or you can buy the cloves and cut them up yourselves. There's also little tools that you can use to crush up the garlic. So I'm just going to let this cook a little bit and let the onions get translucent. So the next ingredients we have is a ½ pound of carrots, or about 4 carrots, 1 28-ounce can of diced tomatoes. And of course, these diced tomatoes are no salt added. It says it right here on the label. You can see that, no salt added. And if you're ever not sure, always flip it over to the back and you can look at the nutrition facts label and you can see in the ingredients that there is in fact no salt added to these tomatoes. I can see that it's tomatoes, tomato juice, and then less than 2% of calcium chloride and citric acid, and that's for preserving. So I know that there truly is no salt in those tomatoes. Then we have a cup of pearled barley, a tablespoon of dried Italian seasoning, 6 cups of low sodium vegetable broth. Low sodium vegetable broth, any kind of broth actually, tends to be pretty high in sodium. And again, if you're ever not sure, you can look at the nutrition facts label and make sure that under sodium, that when you compare it, this one still has 510 milligrams, even though it is low sodium, but comparing that to the regular, I would say there's 900 milligrams of sodium in the regular. So if you're ever not sure, flip it over to the back. And in this case, compare it to the original. And sometimes it's tricky, sometimes like this one, I think it has an asterisk on it. Yeah, so 34% less sodium. And then there's 2 asterisks. And the asterisks say when compared to regular chicken broth, the amount of sodium is 34% less. So, and then we have 1 potato that we'll dice, a cup of frozen green beans, a ½ cup of frozen corn, and a half a cup of frozen peas. I'm going to give this a stir and turn it down just a little bit. So I just want my onions to cook a little bit. I don't want them to be all the way cooked through. Just a little translucent, just to get some of that moisture out of them. And then by adding the garlic at this time, it just kind of helps to let that garlic flavoring to be absorbed into the onions. That's called blooming the spices when you put it in. when you heat it like this in a skillet or pot, and you saute it, whether it's fresh or dried. So what I'm going to do next here, so I have my carrots that are going to go in, pretty sure the next step. I always make sure to look at my recipe when I'm at home, you know, and I want you to use your recipe as a guide. I definitely use it as a guide. You know, I read through the recipe before I make it, and I kind of think about, you know, what else would I add to this? I'm always adding things. Always like, what could make it healthier, and what could I add to it, especially with soup. So the next step is we're going to add the carrots, tomatoes, barley, Italian seasoning, and broth. But I'm going to first, I have some carrots diced over here, or not diced, sliced. But I want to show you how to cut in a carrot here. So you'll notice, if you can see, this carrot is not peeled. I have washed it, but I'm not going to peel it. And the reason is because there are nutrients in the peel, but also, you know, when you're cooking it like this, you cannot taste the peel. You can't tell that the peel is still on there. So even if you don't like carrot peel, you know, with a raw carrot just eating as a snack, when you cook it, you're not going to be able to tell. So I'm going to cut the top end off. And then what I'm going to do is hold my knife at the base here, just a firm grip. I'm not going to put my finger on the knife. I'm just going to do a firm grip. And I'm going to turn this down just a little bit. Brown in there. And that really, I'm going to turn it off while I do this. Okay, so I'm going to hold a firm grip on my knife. I'm going to have the point of my knife down, okay? And then I'm going to do this motion, just a rocking motion, a chopping motion. I'm not going to be lifting the knife up and cutting like this. I'm just going to be rocking it back and forth. And I'm actually going to kind of push that knife like this, okay? So now I'm going to take my onion, I'm going to do my claw, and I'm going to dice all the way through, all the way down. And unfortunately, sometimes, especially the faster you go, the little carrot pieces go flying, and sometimes I accidentally cut the end of them. That's okay. Let's scoot them out of the way here. And you don't have to go fast with this. You want to kind of, with your claw, push the carrot underneath your knife. So your knife is essentially staying in the same place, and you're moving the carrot with your thumb underneath your claw. Okay. Get down to the very end here. Now, one thing that a lot of people will do with the carrot, they'll cut off the top and then they'll cut off the bottom. But really, you don't need to cut off the bottom. You can leave that on, unless there's, you know, a little piece of root or it's kind of dirty. You don't need to cut that end off. Just a little small piece. Just throw it on in. Okay, so now, and actually, what I'm going to do, since my onions are cooked and ready to go, I am going to go ahead and add the next 4 steps, which is carrots, tomatoes, the barley, Italian seasoning, and the broth. Go ahead and get that in. And then I'm going to talk about cutting up the potato. Okay, so with the broth, the recipe calls for 6 cups of broth. And how do I know how many cups are in this container without measuring it out? Well, the handy dandy nutrition facts label, if you flip it over to the back, and this might be upside down for you, I'll hold it like that so you can see it. But at the very top, under nutrition facts, the first thing it says about 4 servings. And then you see that 1 serving size is 1 cup. So by doing a little math there, you know that there's 4 cups in here. There's 4 servings of 1 cup each. So what I'm going to do is pour 1 in, and I know that this is 4 cups. And then I'm going to take the other one. And now with this recipe, you could guess about half of this other container of broth, but I'm going to measure it out. I have a liquid measuring cup here, so I'm going to set it on the counter, and I'm going to pour my broth in this way so it doesn't splash, up to 2 cups, and that will equal 6 cups. And another little, you know, realistically, if you wanted to, it would be okay. You could add all 8 cups of the broth. If you don't have a plan for the other 2 cups, then rather than wasting it or letting it sit in your refrigerator and you not use it, go ahead and pour it in. And you could even add in some more vegetables. You know, I have these recipes and then I talk about, how to change them and how to do them differently. Okay, so I'm going to turn this back up. And I want this to come to a boil. The recipe says stir to combine, cover with a lid, and let soup simmer for 30 minutes. So it doesn't exactly say, but usually when you do that, you want to bring it to a boil, and then you are going to turn the heat down to a simmer, and then we're going to let it simmer for that 30 minutes. So in the meantime, and there's going to be the last steps I'm going to have to do off camera, obviously, because I don't want you to wait around here for 30 minutes, and it's not going to take me 30 minutes to cut this potato. But I want to talk about dicing a potato. Of course, the potato I have washed. And again, I'm not going to peel the potato. I'm going to leave the peel on. There's nutrients in the peel. And especially in a soup like this, you're not going to be able to taste it. So if that's something that's out of habit for you, if you normally peel all your vegetables, consider not peeling them. Especially in a soup like this, where it just kind of all blends in, or even in like a casserole dish. Keep the peel on and see if you can tell a difference. So first, what I want to do with my wobbly potato is get a flat edge. So I'm going to use my claw, of course, and I'm going to cut off, make sure you can see this. I'm just going to cut off just barely the edge of the potato here. Okay, so just a little bit of skin. Now, this is basically a peeling of the skin, and you can toss it if you want, but I'm going to cut it and put it in the soup, but I'm going to set it aside for now. So now I have a flat edge. So I'm going to put my potato on the flat edge. I'm going to do the same thing on this side. I'm just going to cut off just a little bit. So I have another flat edge, and I'm going to do that on all 4 sides. Okay, so I'm going to flip it again. Might not be exact. That's exactly what I say. Don't do. Don't slam your knife on the cutting board. Sometimes it's hard with a round potato like this. So now I have 4 flat edges. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to slice. So I'm going to use my claw here. And I'm going to do, it's about a ½ an inch or so. And I'm going to kind of leave that, it's not attached, but, stuck on to the whole potato like that. I'm going to do all the way across here. One more. I'm actually going to turn the potato this way. It's a little easier to hold on there with my claw. Okay, so now I have, just these slices of potatoes, if you will. And I see a bad edge there that I'm going to go ahead and just cut that off. Didn't notice that before. Just slice that bad edge off. Okay. Oh, well, there's a bad end. See, you never know when you're going to cut your produce open if there's going to be bad sides. I'm just going to cut these ends off here. Okay. Well, and there's a spot here. Let me just slice that off too. Okay, well, this is our plan changed just a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to set those kind of different sides over to the side, and I'm just going to work with these 2 right now. So I'm going to do the same thing that I just did, and I'm going to just slice this way. Same, about a ½ an inch. Okay. So now I have essentially French fries. Okay. So I'm going to line those up, set them down here. And I'm going to, once again, using my claw, pushing it through, I'm just going to cut them, and I will have a dice. And this is actually, this is probably a smaller dice for a potato. A lot of times when we do soup, we do a larger dice, but you can do whatever size potato you like. Usually we'll do just kind of chunk it up, do it a little bit bigger than that. But either way, whatever works for you. Okay, so now since these are kind of all oblong, I'm going to do them separately. So I'm going to do the same thing through here with my claw. Make, again, essentially French fries. And then come through here, slide my potato through with my claw. And you'll notice my cutting board is sliding. There's a trick for that I am not doing, but I'll tell you. If you have a cutting mat like this that's kind of flimsy and light that does tend to slide around, you can take a dish rag or a paper towel and wet it just a little bit and put it underneath, and that will stop the mat from sliding all over the place. I do normally do that, but as you see, I didn't do that today. Okay, so now I'm going to come over here with those other kind of oddball pieces, the ends, the peelings essentially. I'm going to probably line those up. And this is basically just the peel. It's kind of harder to cut this. It's a little more firm. I'm just going to dice it up. These definitely aren't dices. These are more like little pieces, but I don't like to waste vegetables. And again, in soups and stews, you're not going to be able to tell that you have little peelings in there. Okay, so this is going to continue to cook. It's not boiling yet. I'm surprised that it's not. But once it's boiling, we will reduce it to a simmer and let it simmer for 30 minutes. And what we're looking at in that 30 minutes really is just for the carrots to be tender. So you can take a fork and poke it in the carrot, make sure that it's tender. And then at that time, the next step is to add the diced potato. And you're going to cook that for about 10 minutes, again on a simmer. And once the potato is cooked and tender, and it says the recipe says about 10 minutes, but it's going to depend on the size of your potatoes. This is probably not going to take 10 minutes, but if you did the larger pieces, it would take 10 minutes or even more. So then the last step, we're going to add frozen green beans, corn, and peas. So it's a cup of the green beans and then a half a cup of the corn and peas each. And at that point, you're going to cook your soup just long enough for the frozen vegetables to thaw, and then you'll be ready to serve. One thing too with this soup, barley might not be an ingredient that you use much in cooking. It might not be something that you have in your cabinet. You could use any type of grain in replace for that. You could use rice if you had that. There's some other grains out there like quinoa and farro that would be really good in the soup as well. So as always, I encourage you to be creative and use what you have and use what works for your family. And lastly, just stay tuned for the announcement of our new calendars, and we will have those available for you for 2022. Thanks again for joining me today, and I'll see you next year.